Hello, and welcome to the Cross-Border Logistics Summit. I'm FreightWaves reporter Noi Mahoney, and we're going to be talking about a really cool subject. It's the future of technology in U.S.-Mexico trucking, and our guest is Matt Silver, CEO of Cargado. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Excited to be here.
And before we jump in, can you just give us a little background about yourself and Cargado?
Yeah, so I spent a decade working at Coyote Logistics, started the Mexico business there, and then left in 2018. Started my own company, Forager, which you guys covered a good amount, and we were a cross-border digital freight brokerage that was ultimately acquired by Arrive Logistics in January of 2022. That became their Mexico business essentially, and I helped integrate that and lead that until I left at the end of September of 2023. Took a few days off with my wife and son in the Northeast, and then started working on Cargado at that point. Met Rylan right around the same time. He had been working at Convoy, and we know how that story ended. He was there till the very end, and then when the tech was sold off the Flexport, he chose not to go with, and he joined me to start Cargado. And so brought some engineers with him, and we got started. And so Cargado is a marketplace or a platform for cross border freight. There's three core things now that freight brokers are using it for, along with trucking companies. One is posting loads, getting spot freight covered. Two is that they're moving their contracted freight through Cargado as well, so they can post lanes to get bids and do business together. Anything consistent that's repeating. And then the third piece is our pricing tool. So we collect all the bids in the marketplace, and that's been able to feed into a pricing engine that allows brokers to understand what the historical cost has been on a certain lane moving cross-border Mexico or cross-border Canada. And so we've got over 230 brokers today that are using it, including about half of the top 100, and about 1,400 trucking companies at this point between the U.S. at the southern border, Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, and actually, that's a great summary of what you guys are doing. And I wanted to come back to the pricing tool in a little bit, but I wanted to back up just a little bit. I know you mentioned Coyote. You started the Mexico division for that company, and I think about 10 or 11 years ago or so. And I'm just
It
curious.
was it was 2015. It was me and this guy Clark Campos that the two of us were sitting in the corner trying to figure it out.
And when you guys were, starting out, how would you describe, the technology being used by, truckers and customs broker in Mexico trucking back then?
Nextels. They all had Nextels in Mexico. Like when you wanted to track a load, it's not like you could use macro point in Mexico. Their most truck drivers did not have cell phones, and this was in 2014. So we had iPhones obviously in the US, but it was not nearly as common in Mexico, and most truck drivers just had the Nextels. We even had a Nextel phone at the office in Chicago so that we could like beep down to the carriers in Mexico. You would, I remember going down to Laredo and meeting with trucking companies, and they just did everything over WhatsApp and over email. And up until this point, they've done everything over WhatsApp and email and a little bit of LinkedIn. And so back when we started, it was Nextels. We were sending rate confirmations to people, and they were sending drivers to go pick up loads with partner carriers and with their trailers. And but that it was very, very limited. And I remember, God, I feel like it was every few weeks that the customs systems would go down because they were severely outdated, and so you'd end up with delays at the border a lot. That's obviously been a lot more modernized now, although it's still a little bit behind where you'd expect technology to be. But yeah, it was Nextel.
And, fast forward now about over 10 years later, how would you describe it? Has it improved, the technology being used? Your company's, Forger and Cargado's played a role in that, but how would you describe it now?
So I will say that for the freight industry as a whole, you've got Uber Freight and Convoy actually played a huge role in elevating the technology field, if you will, across the industry. It forced everybody to invest more in technology, whether it was their own tech or paying for tech off the shelf. But the modernization of the TMS, started heavily around obviously with Coyote, and then with Convoy and Uber Freight with the the digitization of the trucking side of it and getting drivers on apps. And that's in the US. And in Mexico, it's still much further behind. But what we've seen change has been a lot of trucking companies are investing in their own software. So they'll build out their own systems. There's this freight broker in Monterrey, FWB Logistica, based out of Monterrey. They built their own TMS, and it's great. Like, it handles everything that you would expect a TMS to do, but it's cross border. And so it's got all the complexities of things happening at the border. And I know that company, like all sorts of trucking companies in Mexico right now, are investing in their own technology, or they're investing in TMSs that are available in the market. And so it's it's definitely it's a change that's been cool to see, because if they're going to invest in their own technology, it's something that we can integrate with. It's something that we can help partner with. And so I like to see the investment finally.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of the same things you're talking about. And are there technologies you see poised for even more growth, south of the border, such as the use of AI, or smart cameras, or more tracking devices?
So Gaia Dynamics is doing something very cool with AI, with handling the customs process, and being able to understand the harmonized tariff codes, and how to actually classify customs paperwork, or the commodities. Caspian is doing some really cool stuff with customs related to trade. You've got companies like Revenue Vessel and Import Yeti that are helping freight brokerages understand what types of shippers are moving cross border freight. And so there are a lot of resources finally being poured into cross-border trade, not just in how to move the freight, but how to actually clear the freight, how to get better data related to customs, how to get everything into one place. And I've seen, I share investors with a bunch of those companies that I just talked about. And so um it's been really cool to see that investment start to come into the space. And Solvento, obviously, in Mexico, with factoring and carrier payments, and the data that they're able to collect to be able to support the market. And so I think we're going to continue to see that investment as we see more nearshoring, as we see the USMCA trade deal get renegotiated and updated. I'm sure that will encourage more technology investment, not just manufacturing.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of my favorite companies to come along in a while, which is Import Yeti. I think that's really interesting in the stuff that they do. Uh, but you mentioned earlier about your pricing tool, which I think is one of the coolest pieces of new technology in the Mexico trucking space. Could you talk about how you got the idea for that, and how it's been received?
I mean, it's a natural thing when you think about, as a freight brokerage, what you want to do to be able to move a load. You want to be able to go find freight. What kind of shippers move that freight? And we just talked about Revenue Vessel and Import Yeti are both options for that. If you're trying to, once you find the customer and you need to actually move the freight, the way we started Cargado as the marketplace aspect with the loads and lane postings, your only option as a broker was to post freight, get bids from carriers, and then you knew what the rate was. And so once we had enough bid data, we knew that we could feed that into a pricing algorithm and be able to actually generate rates for people so that they could see it instantly, rather than having to wait for carriers to bid. And so the next step after you find the customer and you get the opportunity is to price it. Once you price it, you want to cover it. And so you post it to try to find capacity. Once you cover it and you want to start tracking it, you need to continue to operate and execute and communicate with the carrier. And so right now our focus has been on initially it was coverage, because that was, to me, the area that I felt like needed the most work right away, and was able to jumpstart the marketplace with my relationships on both sides. And then with the data coming from the marketplace, we were able to build our first data product, which is our pricing tool. And so that's how those two come together. And as we talk to a lot of our customers who are very big in cross-border freight, very invested in it for both Mexico and Canada, they tell us what else they need, and we talk through the other features that they want, and how they can better communicate and collaborate, and work with trucking companies on all borders and both sides of the border.
Yeah, I think the pricing tool is just a really good example of how technology can really benefit, making things easier for us, or it's meant to make things easier for us in the cross-border trucking.
Yep.
In cross-border trucking, I always get a lot of questions about autonomous trucks. And I'm just curious, do you ever see, autonomous driverless trucks playing a big role in cross-border trucking?
I would hope so. I mean, like my perspective on this whole industry has changed pretty dramatically. I think we could spend hours talking about this, but my use of AI, you're talking to an AI version of me right now. It's not even me. I'm kidding. Um, but my use of AI and writing and designing stuff and coming up with things like every aspect of AI for me alone. And then I get to see what Ryland's doing with it and with the rest of our engineering team. And we even have people on our carrier partnership team that are leveraging some AI tools to go expand our network faster. And so the more you see AI and technology, and then you get into a Waymo or a Tesla that can drive itself, and you see, Leo Ron going to Wabi. And so if there's going to be all this investment in autonomous trucking, it will definitely impact cross-border freight. I don't know that you're going to see door-to-door freight moving without a driver. I think you'll see density start to build up to border cities. So just like you see a lot of private fleet capacity moving within Texas between Dallas and Laredo and Houston and Dallas, that Texas triangle, and you could even incorporate El Paso into it. You'll see autonomous trucks moving in those corridors if they're not already. I think they're already doing it. And so if they start running to and from the border, that's the same thing. Now, how that works in Mexico is a very different story. Regulations, technology is further behind. I don't know that there's any versions of autonomous trucking or vehicles in Mexico at this point. So I think we're further behind on that. But then I also know there's green corridors, I want to say, that's working on something between Laredo and Monterrey to be able to speed up transit there. So we could see different parts of this kind of pull together. And I'm excited to help bridge that gap with the amount of data that we're starting to see in our marketplace.
Yeah, you brought up some great points, and something you just mentioned. I don't think I've ever heard of an autonomous truck route in Mexico. Maybe I have to reach out to some of my contacts to see if that's even a thing.
I'll ask. I'm friends with some of the guys that own some of the largest trucking companies in Mexico. I'll send one of them a text and ask them about it, because if anybody's doing it, it'd be somebody like Tomb. And so yeah, I can find out. It's definitely. I have to imagine it's all about the government and what they'll allow or what they won't allow, what they're worried about. Then you've got the infrastructure, the roads, the way that other people drive, because it's all about like uh it's all about how drivers drive. And even in the US with what happened in Florida recently, and with everything else that's happening, like the if there's still people driving cars, you will never have full autonomous trucks. You have to have cars fully autonomous before you can have trucks be fully autonomous, because otherwise you've got somebody that does something dumb and they drive in front of somebody, or they move into somebody, or they merge over the wrong way, or they're in the blind spot. It just gets a lot harder. So I think Mexico's further behind. I think it'll get there, but I think the biggest impact initially will be to and from the border. It'd be interesting to see it at the border, but also, like, if you were to just talk about the crossings, the cost to transfer a load from Nuevo Laredo to Laredo is only like $125. And so the cost there, you're not going to offset a whole lot of cost with autonomous trucking. And so I don't know that that ends up being the best place to do it either. By the way, I don't know if you've looked at Gatego or you're familiar with them yet, but it's the founder comes from a family of trucking companies in Laredo and in Mexico, Monet Transport and Larmex. And so Gatego does automated gate management and very AI driven and based in Laredo. And so I think that'll play a part, but it's not going to be on the autonomous side.
Hmm. I'll have to reach out to them. That I hadn't actually heard of them, but that sounds really something right up my alley, actually.
Yes.
But since you've been on the cutting edge of technology in the U.S. Mexico trucking space for so long, what's next for Cargado, or what's in the future for you?
We've got some really cool tools coming out that are going to help brokers and trucking companies better collaborate that I can't really share quite yet. What I can tell you is that we're definitely leaning heavily into integrations with TMSs and with our pricing data. And so an Excel plugin is, we've been testing that out right now, waiting for that to go live. So by the time this airs, it'll be live. A rating API into third-party pricing tools. So if people want to be able to pull in that data and understand it, then we can support that. So we're very big on integrations and helping automate as much as possible. And the team's been working a lot with some of the really cool AI tools out there that I'm excited to be able to share at some point. So um, there's a lot coming. It's only, keep in mind, we launched our V1 of the product on April 1st of last year.
Hmm.
So we've only been live for a year and 4 months roughly. And so, our engineering team's a lot bigger, they've learned a lot. AI's come a long way. So we'll see where this goes, but there's a lot of really cool stuff on our roadmap that I'm excited to show off at some point this year.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're just out of time. I want to thank you, Matt, for joining us today and sharing your expertise. If people want to learn more about Cargado, where can they go?
Oh, LinkedIn. If you haven't seen me on LinkedIn or Miguel, uh, we both spend a lot of time on social media, or on X, Matt Silver. But cargado.com is our website. And happy to do demos myself for people, but we've got a sales team that can support that too.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you.